Hello everyone, welcome to QA Talk on mistakes to avoid in your APM test. My name is Chandan Mishra and this talk is inspired from an activity which we did in Excel a few months back to improve our test case execution time. First mistake we were making is extensive use of XPath. We were trying to create a test automation framework which can work for both Android and iOS without any change in base classes. So due to that, we were using our operators and contains functions. The approach was fine, but then when the test case count kept increasing, when it reached around 200, that difference was clearly visible. And finally, we stopped using XPath and reverted it back to resource ID and accessibility ID for iOS. The second mistake we did was using thread.sleep for data sync and DB validation and risk conditions. Problem with that approach, when things were fine, that is good. Then when the things are not fine, it was still waiting for a hard-coded wait time. So to fix that, we started using until condition-based approach with awaitability type wait, where we could say that wait at most 5 seconds until the data is updated in DB. Third mistake we were doing was using a common explicit wait time. So we had a default wait time for every element. The approach was to make our maintenance easier because if we have a common default wait, we don't have to provide wait parameter in our page methods. But the problem with that was because different behavior had different type of uh, so we kept increasing weight based on if some elements takes more time and some other elements takes more time. And finally, we found a way to fix that problem by using different kind of explicit wait extra argument in page methods. So for long API responses, we were using long wait. Normally, we were using default wait, and for elements which was like not the first element in the page to check, we were using minimal wait or no wait. The fourth mistake we were doing is using retry depends on another test ng properties. The problem with that was basically as test case counts increased, retry failures were taking a lot of time and priority based tests were not working for threats is equal to parallel. Solution we applied to that is basically we stopped using retry depends on an priority, started raising a failure to developers, and started running each test separately. And all the flaky tests were analyzed thoroughly so that we could find out the exact root cause. Fifth mistake we were making were focusing on test case count rather than test case coverage. The idea behind that was one-to-one mapping between test case present in test automation suite and test case management tool such as TestRail. The problem with that was a lot of duplication. Test step code was written in many test cases, like login was present in almost every test case. So the solution we did is basically we stopped using, we actually removed all the duplicate steps, merged multiple test cases into one case, and focused on test case coverage rather than test case count. Sixth mistake we were doing was doing everything from APM commands. Idea behind that was do not use external sources such as database API layer and network layer to remove the dependency on those particular API or networks. Problem with that approach, we were seeing a lot of flaky tests, high execution time, and duplicate checks on UI. To fix that, what we did is we started making APM calls on UI only once, and later on for other stuff, we were actually using API calls and DB script. So the idea behind that, if things are working once, it should work every time during the test execution period. Seventh mistake we were making were not using in-memory caching. Why we made that mistake? Lack of research and experience in this approach. So the problem with that particular approach, when application pages where there are multiple checks on elements, we need to make multiple calls to APM server. and that every APM call to the server takes a lot of time. So to fix that, what we did, we made one singular call using find elements and multiple elements properties and methods, and then stored them locally in either local collection like maps or list, and started using verification based on the local collection rather than making APM calls every time. And finally, the eighth mistake we were making was not using deep links. So again, lack of deep links in the application was the culprit for that. A problem with that particular approach, when we have multiple modules in our application, lot of test cases in one particular modules require same precondition or steps. So to save that particular time, we could actually use deep links to directly go to that particular module and then execute all our other test cases. To solve that, we actually started using existing deep links, or also asked developers and product manager to create deep links for all the important pages and module in the application. So this was the result. So before making all those improvements, our test case count was around 287 and total time taken during execution was 240. But after making all those improvements, our test case count decreased to 228 because we merged a lot of test cases to improve our test coverage rather than test case count. And total time was decreased to 130. Thank you for listening to this talk.